Hello and welcome back to The Benchmark. I'm Kallie Ejigu and we've been talking with documentary filmmaker Saaret Yoseph, talking of course about the Red Line Project, DC. So this may be an awkward question, but I was talking to a friend of mine about your project and their knee-jerk reaction was, why is an Ethiopian girl doing a documentary about underground graffiti? Like what is the connection? And I'm sure
I want to meet your friend.
But the thing is, the unfortunate thing is a lot of people, I'm sure, are going to have that knee-jerk disassociation that, you know, a young Ethiopian woman should be speaking to young Ethiopian female-related issues. You know, why have you chosen this project? And what do you say to people who are like, okay?
You know, I don't know necessarily like where that question would come from, to be honest, just because like I said, I'm not a speaker box for any one community, so I don't necessarily feel, you know, and I think this is very much kind of a freedom that I feel and I'm grateful for, is that I don't necessarily feel contained to any particular issues.
Right.
So as a commuter, I guess the question would be, why as a commuter would I not speak to these issues? So riding the Red Line every single day, I was curious. So for me, that curiosity kind of just, you know, led me to this place of finding, you know, people that I probably would have never spoken to or gotten a chance to meet had I not, you know, started this project in the first place. So it's unfortunate that people would, you know, come from a place of, you know, why is she not doing this and that and the other thing? But for me, there's no other place that I would rather be than here.
Right. Well, I mean, I completely disagree with that because, like you said, you can't be a soapbox for anyone. It's precisely because you represent many identities. Everybody does.
Right.
But unfortunately, there's that desire to kind of pigeonhole people and say, well, they have to have this kind of viewpoint or desires.
Yeah.
On that same token, I mean, what do you think about this conflict of wanting to call graffiti art? Because I'm sure you've encountered this numerous times in the production process.
Well, I think it helps if you you know, and you probably know this, you know, from your, you know, journalistic background as well, that it helps when you try to like clear your own mind and not go in with like a preconceived notion.
Right.
So that's not always the easiest thing. So I definitely had to catch myself, and I had a very kind of romanticized view of graffiti, like these people at night, you know, just putting out their name for me to see, you know, it was just very kind of like very, very cool, you know, that I really wanted to learn more. And the more that I've kind of gotten deeper into it, the more neutral that I've become. So I think, again, it just comes down to like asking those questions and saying that there's no right or wrong answer. I've heard it from both sides of the fence that graffiti is art, that graffiti is, you know, gang related and it's vandalism, and who gives them the right to, you know, come onto my wall. But there's no, like, because I'm not coming from a place where it has to be either or, the kind of, you know, wild card answers are totally fine with me, and I don't necessarily feel any kind of pressure to come to a consensus about the issue.
So is there any way in the industry of knowing, like, what is the difference between an art form that you see on a wall versus straight gang-related graffiti? Because for people who aren't, you know, we learn about the Impressionists, we learn about the various movements within, you know, conventional art forms. But for people who are just metro writers and they see a bunch of stuff on the wall, how is there a way to differentiate between, you know, this is something to be valued versus this is just something that needs to be painted over? Or is it fair to ask that question?
I think it's absolutely fair to ask that question. If it's the space that you live in and the space that you encounter, you have absolutely every right to ask that question. Probably the most interesting answer that I've received when I kind of asked that question myself, because I absolutely do, and nearly every interview that I've done about it, is that, you know, graffiti is a craft. And like every craft, it has to be kind of shaped and molded and developed over time. So that valuation is very much there, even with graffiti writers who are saying, oh, you know, that sometimes the audience is the graffiti writers themselves. You do it sometimes to impress your fellow writer. So, you know, somebody seeing it, one graffiti writer will say that's garbage, and there's like sometimes even like a code of conduct that some people adhere to. Whereas like you there's like a bubble letter style that some people do, and if you can go better than that, if you can do a burner, then you can cover that one, and it's cool. Nobody's gonna be mad that you covered over it, you know. But you know, depending on who you encounter, the code of conduct differs.
So it's really an underground culture. I mean, there's a language, there's there's a protocol.
I'm trying to be fluent, but it's not. This whole process is like trying to get fluency, but there's and like every culture, there's going to be dissent, and there's not going to be, everybody's not going to be on the same page, and that's the cool thing about it, you know. And if anything, opening up the conversation and trying to bring commuters into the dialogue and see this, I think is kind of eye-opening. It's essentially been eye-opening for me, because the things that I went into with those preconceived notions that I tried to clear but didn't necessarily go away have been alleviated by having these like multiple conversations with people and seeing that there's not kind of an across the board rule that goes with graffiti writers or the commuters that see it, or anybody really. I mean, the city's obviously going to try to regulate it and do graffiti abatement as best as they can, but with programs like the Murals DC initiative or Murals DC program that is bringing on graffiti writers who are doing their work illegally to do these legal pieces, it's kind of like this way to balance out the issue, which is considered a problem, of kind of gearing people away to doing illegal activity and getting them to have the time and the space to do these mural pieces and infuse it with graffiti style, because it definitely is like a style that's happening.
So it seems like you were able, through the clips I've seen, to get close to one graffiti artist, Jew, and we're about to see the clip. So could you tell us a little bit about that clip before we see it?
Yeah.
And about him.
Well, so he was the first interviewee that I did, or the first interviewee that I talked to, and again, it was very much because I was like, who is this guy? So I wanted to find out, and I wanted to ask him, why did you do that Kanye piece? Why did you do that Fresh Prince piece? And the answers were not that surprising. It was to get my attention, obviously, but talking to him and having that one-on-one conversation was definitely invaluable, because how many times you get to talk to somebody who, like the people who have like the street signs, who are half the people whose names are on these street signs? It was essentially the same thing to me, because I wanted to know the story behind them. So the video that you're about to see is me asking him these kind of straight up questions, and it was incorporated to a course that I had at Georgetown, where I used it as kind of an ethnographic project, and it was actually one of the most difficult kind of projects that I had to do, just because I was including myself as the ethnographer. It's very painful to hear my own voice sometimes on camera.
I still hate
it. So just including my voice in there and the questions that I was asking, it was very much to kind of add transparency to the project, because that's really, really important for me to let people see kind of the strings that are happening. And I'm not at all trying to be a puppeteer, but it's just like, this is what's going on behind the scenes. This is why I was drawn to the project. So I include a little bit snippet about myself, but it's very much just me in a room with him. You don't see me. I'm kind of like the person behind the scenes.
And you can hardly see him.
Yeah, you can hardly see him, and that's to protect his anonymity. But asking him the kind of questions that I was wondering when I was on the train, and I was fortunate enough to get those answers.
So it's really fascinating the shift graffiti has taken. I mean, we're seeing a major influence of it infiltrating, the art scene, and with documentary films like Exit Through the Gift Shop, and graffiti artists like Banksy, who's selling his art for millions of dollars. Do you think this shift is going to really progress? I mean, you spoke a little bit about it earlier, about how all cultures kind of go through their stages, but do you think graffiti will see itself as something that you'll see at grandma's house hanging on the wall? Or
grandma would have to be real cool. No, I mean, that's actually one of the questions that I asked the graffiti writers too. If that kind of, because graffiti is something that very much has its roots and started off outside, and it's in the cloak of darkness and things like that, does our perception of it and does its value change when it's put indoors?
Right.
And again, have gotten mixed answers about that. But what is kind of most interesting to me about public art, it is that more than going to the museums, people aren't encountering this every single day.
Right.
You might take a Sunday off to go to the museum, but every single day on your commute you're seeing this. And whether we are cognizant of it or not, it's having an impact. And I think it's completely fine. And again, I'm probably, because I'm not a graffiti artist myself, I can't necessarily say if it's better or worse to work with pieces that just go indoors or hang in people's, houses. But I think that that's sustainable work for them. That's essentially what it is. The more that the graffiti gets mainstreamed, the more opportunity that graffiti writers have a chance to come out of the darkness and make money, like you and me, and make a living off of their artistry or their craft, whatever you call it.
So what has been the most eye-opening, I guess maybe revelation, or if there is one, or if you're still in the process of formulating kind of, I guess, a conclusion about the art scene now that's come out of the filmmaking process?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, I don't aspire to find a conclusion, and I don't know if that's necessarily a cop-out or anything, but
well, that could be in itself.
For me, it's very much about the questions and the process, so I don't necessarily aspire to have some kind of happy bow tied on this, because so far I haven't seen that kind of general across the board feeling about graffiti or about the red line. Some people could care less. Some people are extremely invested in it, especially like younger graffiti writers who want to make a name for themselves. They go to the red line, so the conclusion isn't as important to me as asking the questions and framing the story as justly as I can for all the stakeholders that are involved.
So I guess for your own conclusion in terms of the filmmaking process, what has been like the biggest challenge? What's been the most rewarding aspect of just the whole going out with the interviews, having your camera, the editing process, especially since this is your first?
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, that's such a loaded question.
Sorry.
But I mean, learning filmmaking, I mean, it's something so like historicized and beyond my kind of beginner's knowledge of it. So that the production end of it, like the business end of it, the technical and aesthetic elements of it has all been a learning process every step of the way. So I mean, I have been in a kind of self-taught filmmaking 101, applying for grants and kind of figuring out like, is this the right camera? Is this the right angle? Is the light okay? Things like that have been an enormous challenge. And every day there's some kind of frustration or obstacle to get over. But I mean, that's kind of half the fun, So definitely, I would say the whole kind of filmmaking process, the things that you don't see have probably
been challenging. There's indeed much. And then what about on the most rewarding thing so far?
The challenge is, honestly, I mean, it's hard, but it's a good hard, and you and I were talking off camera about, the kind of fear that goes into like producing work sometimes, and at some point when it's all said and done, I will, probably be nervous about like the reception of it and things like that. But right now it's this kind of freedom and responsibility to produce something earnestly, and to try to understand it and give it my all. So like, that challenge has been rewarding. Like the things that I encounter on a daily basis about where does the money go? Who should I be talking to? How do I find the right resources to make the story happen? Those have been, the good and bad side of the coin. So like, it's probably the challenge and the reward. And I mean, I appreciate all of it.
So let's fast forward to the end of this year. We're seeing the film. For someone,
do you like it?
Does it matter? You already got your money, What do you hope that the viewer gets as soon as they walk out from watching the film? What is one thing that you hope that they can get from the project?
I hope that they walk away with an understanding of a story that's not their own. I hope they walk away caring more if they cared less when they walked in. And I hope that my kind of like homage to the city essentially and to the space was something that they felt was done right and done well. The kind of conversations that I have, grad school has been an amazing opportunity to kind of have these like intersecting tracks with the project, because I came in with the project before I joined Georgetown's program, and have been able to incorporate it into my coursework. So I have like a class on public space right now, and the kind of questions that we don't really, ask when we're walking down the street plugged into our iPhones,
Right.
or our iPods or whatever you're plugged into with this kind of bubble around you, that person sitting next to you that you don't have a conversation with, how can we make those conversations happen, So it's very much, especially with the website, and why it's so important to me is to kind of use this virtual space to re-engage people's physical space. So if I can do that, then, job well done, and I'm completely happy and I can sleep well at night.
I'm happy that you mentioned this bubble that, a lot of people live in, because, and it also speaks to that question of why, I mentioned it earlier, of like, why is this Ethiopian girl doing a project on graffiti?
Yeah.
I think people forget as DC residents that DC is an incredibly rich city.
Yeah.
Not only culturally, but people's professions, their desires, the art, everything. Why do you think, and it's unfortunately specific to Ethiopians in DC, we stay very much in a bubble. You can live on one corner, work on that corner, go to the Ethiopian restaurant on that corner. Can you speak to that insular culture that it and it's not just specific to Ethiopians.
Yeah,
you see it in
not at all.
Hispanic neighborhoods, you see it in Polish neighborhoods. Can you speak to that desire to kind of stay within yourself and in a protected space, because you've done the opposite with this project?
I mean, it doesn't necessarily feel like that, but I think that there's like this innate desire to be anchored by people that are like you. And it's like you said, it's not just the Ethiopian community. I mean, I pass by, street signs on my bus route where kids are repping their neighborhood, like a specific intersection in a neighborhood that's like, I know DC is small, but it's definitely bigger than this block right here, and they feel, a kind of responsibility or just are anchored by that space, know? So I think that people have a desire for connections, and as like technology progresses, and it's not all just about technology, but as technology develops, we have more opportunities to kind of stay with people that are like-minded. You can go to blogs where people reinforce your opinions. You can listen to only songs that suit you and not have a conversation with the person next to you. There's that kind of like ability and that tendency to just kind of stay with folks like me. So I don't necessarily think that like any one community does this more. I think that we're all doing it. I mean, myself, I have to catch myself when I'm just kind of like, oh, it's a long day, I gotta put in my iPhone and my headphones and just tune everybody out, But when we can kind of tune back in for a second, I think that, our eyes will be open that much more.
And if you could turn the lens on yourself.
Oh, okay.
I'm really interested in knowing how does your Ethiopianness come into your identity? I mean, you experienced a lot of it when you went back home, you experience it here. I mean, have you come to a sort of conclusion about what your Ethiopianness means to your work, to your lifestyle, to your, I guess maybe your life's mission?
That's to be determined.
You can't skirt this one. Okay, you skirted a couple of them. You gotta answer this one.
No, I mean, if anything, like again, I try to liberate myself as much as possible from these kind of labels, but it's nice to kind of infuse myself into any kind of definition of Ethiopianness, because I feel even when I was in Ethiopia, everybody thought I was like Chinese. Like it was it was crazy. So I'm like, yeah, this is Ethiopian too, So like, to your friend that was kind of thinking like, oh, what's an Ethiopian girl, doing, talking about graffiti? I mean, the fact that now that an Ethiopian girl is talking about this,
right.
You won't necessarily have that same kind of preconceived notion.
Exactly.
So, not that I think that I'm, this crazy kind of wild card or anything, but I feel that, just doing me, that represents Ethiopia enough.
So do you see yourself progressing with this medium, or are you kind of a free bird? Do you think you'll go back to writing? Will you stay with documentary film? Will you get into radio? I mean, where do you see this propelling you in maybe like a couple of years' time?
Well, I mean, it's nice to have a project, and just something that you can kind of have tunnel vision about.
Right.
So, I mean, this is very much where my mind is right now, but in terms of like where I'll be, years from now, I jokingly like refer to myself as like a dilettante on my profession on Twitter, and just a professional dabbler, and I think that probably, in years past that had more of a stigma attached to it, what is it that you do, and like I said, I have more of a intimate relationship with words, and I definitely don't see myself straying too far from writing, but I think that the age that we live in right now just definitely rewards people that have their hands in different pots, and that kind of not necessarily are specialized in one thing, but have a general knowledge of a lot of things, so filmmaking would be awesome to continue exploring after this. Writing, I'm sure, won't be far behind, but who knows, 10 years from now. I'm just enjoying, finding new challenges, and if that's radio, if that's, flying a plane or something, as long as it's something that I can, be a student and that I can kind of learn from,
right.
And kind of increase my knowledge and my curiosity. Like I don't ever want to lose a passion for a project. So as long as that passion is there, then I'm good. It can be in any medium or any platform.
So I guess essentially to conclude, and you touched upon it a little bit just now, what's your benchmark? What do you see yourself as saying, okay, well, when this happens, that for me is going to be a moment where I feel like I've made it, or that I feel fulfilled?
Well, Oprah's about to be off the air. So
that was my job.
That was yours. Oh, dang. Oh yeah, this is my benchmark right here. No.
We're gonna have a conversation afterwards.
End of 2011. Once this is done, I will feel not necessarily that I made it, but I made something, and that will be a benchmark in and of itself. After that, if I can, as long as my name is attached to something that I believe in, then my mission is job done, mission accomplished. I can go home. But the thing that I see nearest on the horizon is definitely this production wrapping, this film being released, and having it on screen somewhere, and that will be my benchmark, definitely.
So I love that. Normally I would have just ended on that, but I think it's great for Ethiopian culture because we're very much about the long term. Mm-hmm. But every time I've asked you a question about like a conclusion, you're so much about living in the moment and being about completing this assignment for today, or this challenge for right now. Mm-hmm. Would you say that in a sense could be another benchmark for you, that there are constantly new benchmarks for you that you're constantly meeting?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is important. For things to stay fresh is important. It's not necessarily that I don't think long term. Like I said, writing is always going to be, right there for me and what I feel comfortable with. But small picture is really important to kind of immerse yourself in subject matter. I feel like when you think too far ahead, sometimes it can keep you distracted from what you have right in front of you. So yeah, definitely this project is what I'm all about, living, eating, breathing it for months to come.
Thank you so much, Saaret. And
Thank you for having me.
We are waiting with bated breath.
So am I. Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching. This has been The Benchmark with Kallie Ejigu. To learn more about the Redline DC project, visit redlinedc.wordpress.com. And don't forget to visit us at ebstv.tv or my Facebook page at facebook.com/thebenchmark. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned.